All right, guys, so this is the introduction for the muscular system and body movements. All right, so before we start actually delving into the lab manual on page one, okay, let's start talking first about, right, exactly how, right, our bones move, right, or in some cases don't move. To talk about that, we got to talk about the word articulate. Okay, so when we say it articulate, okay, we see that the bones of our body join with one another. Okay, so what are some classification of articulations? Okay, what are some classifications of joints? Well, joints perform basically two functions for the human body. Number one, it holds the bones together. Okay, and two, okay, if the joint is movable, right, it allows for gross body movements. All right. So we did talk about the skeletal system the last lab, right? And there's some joints out there, okay, where when bones articulate with one another, okay, that particular joint doesn't allow movement between the two bones. Okay, and that's what the first two, fibrous joints and cartilaginous joints, okay, those are very immovable joints. Okay, the third type of joint, the one that we're really highlighting in this lab, okay, are synovial joints. Okay, so what's the difference between 1, 2, and 3? All right, so as a general rule, right, fibrous joints are removable. Okay, synovial joints are very movable. They're very freely movable. Right, cartilaginous joints, okay, they can be rigid. Okay, meaning they don't move at all, or they can be slightly movable. All right, so fibrous joints, based upon what you learned in the previous lab, in our skeletal system lab, okay, we can think, for example, of sutures. All right, so sutures again are those joints, okay, that for example join the parietal bone with the frontal bone. Okay, so if I think about the coronal suture, or the sagittal suture, or the squamosal suture, or the lambdoidal suture, okay, these are very fibrous, immovable joints. Okay, so these bones weren't ever meant, okay, to move basically. You also have what are called syndesmoses. All right, so these ones here are your ligaments. Okay, so ligaments are those connective tissue structures which are dense, regular connective tissue that do what? Well, they join bone to bone. Right, so syndesmoses, okay, or ligaments, okay, are connected exclusively together by ligaments, right? And then the third one, okay, are called gomphosis, all right? And the gomphosis is like a peg in a socket joint. And the only one we think about in our body is the example of the tooth articulating within the socket, all right? So if I think of sutures, if I think of ligaments, if I think of, okay, your teeth in your socket, well, those aren't meant to move. These are what we call fibrous joints. The second type of joint, okay, are called cartilaginous joints. Okay, so you need a piece of cartilage now, okay, joining the two bones, or a piece of cartilage between the two bones that articulate with one another. Now, these ones are not highly movable. All right, so you can have a joint, a cartilaginous joint that consists of hyaline cartilage, okay, or you can have now a type of joint, okay, that consists of fibrocartilages. So the one that's, okay, joined together by a hyaline cartilage, okay, we call those synchondroses. Okay, and the ones that's joined by a fibrocartilage, we call those symphysis. So here, for example, okay, you see the epiphysis of a long bone, right? And then we have what's called articular cartilage, which is hyaline cartilage. Okay, so that would be considered, okay, a synchondrosis. Or when I think about, okay, the true ribs articulating with the sternum, okay, and this piece of hyaline cartilage there, what we call those costal cartilages. Okay, same thing. Now, between the vertebra, okay, we do have a piece of fibrocartilage. Okay, these are called the intervertebral discs. All right, so these would be considered symphysis. Okay, or you guys remember the two coxal bones joining together, right? That's called the pubic symphysis. So you can see where that name came from in terms of that structure that you learned back, right, in the skeletal system lab. Now, the third type of joint, the joint we're really stressing in this lab when we talk about the muscles and body movements, okay, are the synovial joints. Okay, so the synovial joints, okay, there's a presence of a fluid-filled cavity, okay, at the articulation. All right, so these are the most movable joints of the human body. All right, so starting on page one, right, it says define the following terms: circumduction, flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, rotation. And then there's some movement specific to the foot of ankle, okay, and then there's some movement specific to the hand, okay. So if you look on the page top of page 1. Okay, there's a lot of things that you have to fill out there. All right. Now, stressing the movements allowed by the synovial joints, well, there's different types of movements that typically are allowed. Okay, you have gliding movements, which isn't listed in your lab manual. Angular movements. Okay, so things like flexion and extension. Okay, adduction, right? Or you can have rotation. Okay, where a bone rotates along the bone's axis. So the first one is gliding. This one's not in your lab manual, but we're just going to describe it anyways. Okay. When nearly the flat surfaces of two bones, for example, the bones in your wrist, the carpal bones, when they slip past one another. So when you wave by, when you do the little pageant wave, right? Okay. So gliding occurs between the carpals. Okay. Also in your foot, if you kind of turn your foot inside and out. Okay. Like trying to wave with your foot. Okay. Well, we call that type of movement gliding. All right. Again, not in your lab manual. Now, there's a rotation, all right? So this one is in your lab manual. Okay, so when a bone rotates along its own axis, right? So the one you typically think about is when you rotate your head left or you rotate your head right, all right? What that happens, well, there's a movement between the atlas and the axis. Okay, do you guys remember the odontoid process, right? The dens that projects superiorly, and articulates with the atlas. Okay, so allowing for the rotation of the head. Okay, you can see there is a rotation along the axis of that dens, right? Now you also have the angular movements. Okay, this is what pretty much we see on page 1 of your lab manual. Okay, so where we increase or decrease the angle between two bones. All right, so flexion, extension, abduction, circumduction. So when we do a flexion, for example, here you see flexing the head, right, or extending the head, or you can think about your arm. If you were to bend your arm, like doing a curl, right, that would be considered a flexion. You decrease angle, going from, let's say, 180 degrees, to 45 degrees, right? That would be considered a flexion, doing curls at the gym. An extension is when you increase the angle between two bones. All right, so as you increase the angle, going from 45 degrees back to 180, going from the curl position down to the weights at your waist, well, we consider that an extension. All right. Abduction. So here is our subject in anatomical position. And we're going to say there's a midline running right down this individual. When you take a body part, in this case the arm, and you move it away from the midline. So the midline is right here, right? If I move my arm away from the midline, we call that an abduction, abduction. If you then move the body part back towards the midline, well, we call that then an adduction or an adduction. All right. Now a circumduction, abduction, adduction. A circumduction is when you define a cone in space. So if you take your arm off to the side like this, and you kind of make a circle with your hand, kind of like wax on, wax off, right? Mr. Miyagi and Danielson, right? So the idea of making your arm and doing kind of a circular motion, well, your hand makes the base of the cone, and then your shoulder is stationary, which makes the apex of the cone. So as you do this with your arm, you define a cone in space, what we call that circumduction. Okay. All right, what are some special movements? So special movements specific to the foot, special movements specific to the ankle and the hand, right? Well, we see this on page 1, right? So starting off with movements specific to the foot and ankle, you can have a dorsiflexion. So if you take your foot off the gas or you try to point your toes towards the ceiling, we call that a dorsiflexion. Or if you want to stand on your tippy toes or push down on the gas, we call that a plantar flexion. All right. Now, spraining your ankle, you can sprain it by turning your foot in, or a more severe type of sprain is taking your foot and turning it laterally. Well, turning your foot in, we call that an inversion of the foot and ankle. An eversion is when we then take our foot, and we turn it laterally. So this is an inversion of the foot. This is an eversion of the foot. All right. So continuing with page 1, what are some movements specific to the hand? All right, so just picture doing the Macarena, right? So when you're in anatomical position, right, your palms are facing forward. Well, we call that supination. Okay, if you now take your palms and you place it towards the back, right? Palms facing backwards now, well, we call this a pronation. Okay, so palms facing forward, supination. Palms facing back, we call that a pronation, right? So you can see, guys, why you want, okay, in anatomical position, the palms to be facing forward, the palms to be supinated, okay? Because when the palms are facing forward, okay, you can see that the radius, okay, is the more lateral bone now, and here is the ulna, which is the more medial bone, okay? If you now have your arms off to the side, okay, and in this case your palms facing backward, you can see that your radius and your ulna cross over and make an X. Okay, so the reason why we put our palms facing forward in anatomical position is that the radius and the ulna, the radius is the more lateral, the ulna is the more medial, that the two are parallel to one another. So we can say the radius is lateral to the ulna, or we can say that the ulna is medial to the radius. Okay, now an easy way to remember the difference between supination and pronation, if you want to drink soup, well then you have to supinate your palms, okay, to drink soup with your hands. Okay. All right, so we're going to keep moving on. Okay, we're still on page 1. All right, we're going to be talking about some histology. Okay, we're going to talk about some, okay, slides of muscle tissue. Right, so there's 3 different types of muscle tissue in your body. Okay, there's smooth muscle, right, and the smooth muscle occupies the walls of your hollow organs. For example, the walls of your stomach, the walls of your digestive tract, the walls of your respiratory system, your urinary system, right, your reproductive system. Okay, you have smooth muscle there. Okay, and control again is not voluntary. We can't control, for example, churning food in our stomach. All right. Now the cells lack striations, meaning that, and we'll see what this means later, there's no light dark bands when you look at smooth muscle. Okay, so that's why we call it smooth. It doesn't have striations, right? Cardiac muscle you only find in one part of your body, right? Let me add this before I move on to cardiac. Okay, you find it in other places besides just the walls of your hollow organs. You find it in your eyes, for example, right? You're going to find smooth muscle in your skin, right? In any case, though, they're still not striated and they're still not under voluntary control. All right, but the majority smooth muscle is in the walls of your hollow organs. All right, the second type of muscle is cardiac muscle. So cardiac muscle is only found in your heart. Okay, the cells are striated, right? And the contraction, again, is not voluntary. It's under unconscious control, okay? So this will move things within the lumen of your hollow organs. This is going to move blood, right? So by the heart beating and pumping, it now pushes blood through your blood vessels, right? Now, because smooth muscle and because cardiac muscle are found in visceral organs, typically, okay, we call smooth muscle and cardiac muscle, collectively, we call them the visceral muscles. Now, the last one is under voluntary control, meaning that we have conscious control over this, all right? And that's called skeletal muscle, okay? And skeletal muscle makes up 40% of your body weight, right? Now, so if you try losing, you're burning fat and you're gaining muscle, okay, you may not see that, okay, weight loss when you step onto the scale, okay, because muscles do way more than fat. All right, so what do skeletal muscles do? Well, they attach to and they move the skeleton. All right, so again, this is under voluntary control, okay, and also the cells are striated, okay, so in terms of striations, cardiac muscle cells are striated, okay, and skeletal muscle cells are striated, okay. Now, what's not shown on this in terms of their description, okay, smooth muscle cells, okay, and skeletal muscle cells are really long, okay, and they're so long that we call them fibers, okay, so if you heard the word skeletal muscle fiber before, okay, they're not talking about collagen fibers and elastic fibers and reticular fibers. Okay, when they say skeletal muscle fiber, they're actually talking about these long cells. Okay, if you ever heard the word smooth muscle fiber, well, they're talking about these long cells. Okay, okay. So cardiac muscle tissue, though, they're not. The cells that make up cardiac muscles are not long. Okay, they're actually pretty small. All right, so we don't say cardiac muscle tissue, we just say cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle fibers. I'm sorry. We say cardiac muscle cells, okay? All right, so the main function, when you think about, I don't care if I'm talking about smooth muscle, I don't care if I'm talking about cardiac muscle, I don't care if I'm talking about, okay, skeletal muscle. When you think of muscle, what's the function? Okay, in any case, they move something, right? So skeletal muscle moves your bones, smooth muscle moves things and squeezes things within your hollow organs, right? And then cardiac muscle moves blood, right? So they move. They all move something, right? Two, another function is okay, in terms of skeletal muscle, okay, it maintains posture, okay? So you're not moving by maintaining, but if you're sitting down right now, right, and you're not leaning against anything, you're just sitting up straight, right? Or if you're standing up, you're not moving, right? What do you think is holding you up? What do you think is maintaining your posture? Okay, well, that is going to be muscle, in this case, skeletal muscle, right? Skeletal muscles also do what? Joint stabilization, right? So if I think about the articulation between the head of my humerus, right, and the glenoid cavity of my scapula, right, that's not a very deep articulation. It's not like the head of the femur and the acetabulum of the coxal bone. So there's some joints that are stabilized by your skeletal muscles. Okay, another one is heat generation, right? So if you ever get cold, what do you do uncontrollably? You shiver, right? So by shivering, right, you're generating these body movements. You're generating contraction of skeletal muscle, okay, which burns ATP, which then generates heat, right? So thermal regulation could be another function of skeletal muscle, right? So what I really highlighted is movement. I wanted to stress that all three muscle tissues, they move something. And then 2, 3, 4 was really talking about skeletal muscle, all right, specifically. All right, so on the bottom of page 1, okay, we see some slides, okay, albeit I would say the cardiac muscle isn't the best slide out there, right, on that particular page. So let's show you a picture of a better, okay, cardiac muscle slide. All right, so cardiac muscle, again, you find that in the walls of your heart. Skeletal muscle, you find these again attached to your bones, causing bones to move voluntarily. And then smooth muscle you find in the walls of your hollow organs. Okay, so skeletal muscle cells and smooth muscle cells are long. We call them fibers. Cardiac muscle cells are short. We just call them cells. All right. So here, if you look at this, okay, you tell me what this is based upon my description to you guys already. I see these really long cells. So here's one cell. Here's another cell. Here's another cell, and so forth and so on. So I see these long cells running parallel to one another. Okay, you can see their nuclei in black. And they have striations. I see these light, dark bands. Okay, so if I see striations, it's either skeletal muscle or it's cardiac muscle, right? The fact that I see really long cells, though, tells me that it's what? Well, it's not cardiac, it's skeletal. Okay, so on your page 1 of your lab manual, the one on the top left, okay, that one here is skeletal muscle, okay? So the one in the lab manual, the fibers are pointed vertically. On my slide here, the fibers, the cells are pointed horizontally, okay? All right, this next one here, okay, you can actually see there's striations. I try to put a figure here to see striations, okay? And you actually can see these cells aren't long, okay? So here's, for example, one cell. There's the nucleus, okay? And this red line here and here shows you that this cell is joining to this cardiac muscle cell, and it's also joining to this cardiac muscle cell over here, okay? Now, you also see that cardiac muscle cells are branched, all right? So they're branched, they're short, okay, and they're joined to other cardiac muscle cells. Okay, well, the point where they join to one another, for example, this red line joining this cardiac muscle cell to that cardiac muscle cell, we call this an intercalated disc. Okay, so this is going to have, for example, desmosomes. We talked about this, right, in the muscle lecture, right, in terms of, well, not muscle lecture, but the tissue lecture, when we talked about, briefly introduced, right, cardiac muscle. So here, if I bring this down, this is actual micrograph. You actually see here's one cardiac muscle cell, and here's that intercalated disc joining this cardiac muscle cell to that cardiac muscle cell, right? And you can see the striations, okay? So if I see striations, if I see intercalated discs, right, the cells aren't that long, right? Well, I know this is cardiac muscle tissue, all right? So this is the one that's found in the walls of your heart, okay, that allows then you to pump blood through your blood vessels, through your arteries and your veins. All right, so here, what do I see? Well, you see the nuclei of cells, right? You see these really long cells, and I don't see any striations here. So if I see long cells, I don't see striations. Well, the only one that doesn't have striations is going to be smooth muscle, okay? And this is the one on the bottom of page 1, right? Again, those fibers are pointed vertically. On my slide, the fibers are pointed horizontally here. Okay, so the one that doesn't look so hot on your lab manual is cardiac. So the one on the top right on page 1, okay, this is a better representation of what cardiac muscle. I see the striations, I see intercalated discs, this is a good representation of cardiac muscle tissue. Okay, not the one on the top right on page 1. That's a horrible one. All right. So moving on to page 2 and the rest of this lab. All right. So the goals is to locate and identify each of the following muscles on a model and a diagram. Right. Describe the specific action of each muscle. Right. So on a lab exam, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if this was on campus, I'm going to put a sticker on these models. Okay, and ask you name the specific muscle and its action. Okay, so you have to not only identify the name of the muscle, you have to tell me what it does in terms of what type of movement does it do, okay, when that muscle contracts. Now, if this class is online, well, I can put a picture of a model, right, and I can put an arrow pointing at a muscle. Same deal. I can ask you name the specific muscle. It could be a 1-part question, okay, or I can make it a 2-part question. Name the specific muscle and its action. Okay, so in your textbook, the actions that you should memorize are the ones that are highlighted in blue, right? So go to the muscle chapter, right? You're going to see that the textbook is written kind of in a table format, right? There could be multiple actions, but the one I really want is the prime action produced by the muscle, and the prime action produced by the muscle is the one highlighted in blue, okay? I also go over some of those, okay, also in this presentation. All right, so we're starting on page 2. Okay, we're looking at the head and the face muscles, all right? So we're going to see, okay, the prime movers of jaw closure, okay, which is mastication, chewing food, are the masseter and the temporalis muscle, okay? So here you can see what's called the temporalis. It's a fan-shaped muscle on the side of your head, right? So this helps close the jaw. Okay, the second muscle we talk about here is what we call the masseter muscle, masseter, masticate. Okay, so we have, okay, again, this is a pair. You have one temporalis on the left, one temporalis on the right. You have a masseter on the left. You have a masseter on the right. All right. These do what? Well, the action you can see here closes the jaw. Okay. So on the lab exam, I'm not going to put figures. I'm going to put actual pictures or the actual model itself. Okay. So here is one of the models that we have. Okay. You can actually see here is that fan-shaped muscle. Well, that's the temporalis muscle. Okay, so if I say name specific muscle, temporalis. If I say name specific muscle and then action, well, temporalis would be your first part, and then action, okay, is that it closes the jaw. All right. So here's another model that we have. Right, the temporalis isn't really highlighted, okay, so much on this, but you do see the masseter, okay, and it goes underneath the mandible. See the muscle fibers running vertically here, okay, and over here, this is how wide it is. I'm going to show you how wide it is first, and then how, okay, the fibers are running vertically. All right, so that's the masseter muscle. Name specific muscle, masseter, okay, name specific action, okay, closes the jaw. All right, muscle and action, masseter, closes jaw. All right, the next one is found in your cheek. You guys remember when you're doing the body regions in lab 1, okay, with the anatomical doll that looks like Abraham Lincoln, right? The buccinator muscle, you think of the buccal region, well, that's your cheek region, right? So here you can see that buccinator region, a buccinator muscle right there, right? And what this does, okay, is that it compresses the cheeks, right? So when, for example, whistling, okay, when your cheeks kind of go in when you whistle, all right, we call that the buccinator muscle. Okay, so on this here, again, this was the masseter right there, right? And it's this deep one right here. Okay, so not this muscle here, not that muscle here, but this one that's deep to all that. This muscle here is the buccinator muscle right there. Okay, so action, it compresses the cheeks. All right, oculi means eyes, oris means mouth, right? And we have a ring-shaped muscle, orbicularis, like orbiting, right? One that goes around the eye, this ring-shaped muscle around the eye, we call this the orbicularis oculi muscle. Okay, if you guys remember your microscopes, okay, the eyepieces are also known as the ocular lenses. Okay, and what the orbicularis oculi muscle does, okay, it closes the eye. Okay, when you blink or squint your eyes, okay, that's the orbicularis oculi. And then you have a ring-shaped muscle that goes around your mouth. Okay, this one here is called the orbicularis oris muscle. Okay, so this one here purses your lips, right? Like when you kiss, for example, or when you whistle. Okay, this is what we call the orbicularis oris muscle. Okay, so if you go to actual model, you can see the ring-shaped muscle that goes around the eye. That's orbicularis oculi. Okay, and then you see, this is the sagittal section, so you can't see all of it. You see half here, going around the mouth of this model, you can see here, this is the orbicularis oris muscle. Okay. All right, zygomaticus. You guys remember from the skeletal system lab, the zygomatic bone is your cheekbone, right? So right here you can see, okay, here's that cheekbone right there. Okay, so extending from the zygomatic bone to the corner of your lips, okay, you have, okay, the zygomaticus minor muscle and the zygomaticus major muscle, right? For the lab exam, okay, and sorry, before I even do that, the action is that it raises the lateral corners of the lips, okay? So when you smile, okay, people call your zygomaticus muscle the smiling muscles, okay? So picture these muscles getting shorter in length when they contract, and they pull on the lateral corners of your lips, causing then you to smile, right? So you can see them here, okay? So you don't have to know minor and major, just call them zygomaticus, okay? So if I point at either one of these, okay, the answer is zygomaticus, action, okay? It causes you to smile, okay? It raises the lateral corners of your lips. All right, the sternocleidomastoid muscle is paired, okay? So here you see this really long one right here, okay? Okay, there's also one off to the side, on the other side, they didn't highlight it. Okay, but this really long muscle right here, we call this sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so it's a two-headed muscle, right, in your neck that flexes the neck. So if you wanted, okay, to flex your neck to the left shoulder, okay, or flex your neck over to the right shoulder, okay, that's the sternocleidomastoid, right? When both of the sternocleidomastoid muscles contract, okay, well then it causes then flexion of the neck forward, okay, so kind of bringing your chin down to your chest, for example, okay. All right, so what would that look like here? You can actually see it right here. So here's your sternocleidomastoid right there, okay. All right, so we're gonna move on, guys, okay, from page 2 of your lab manual, right, now to page 3 of your lab manual, and we're gonna talk about the muscles that make up, right, the shoulder and the thorax muscle. All right, so starting off in your chest, okay, you have this really large muscle right here, okay? Think of the muscle that you use when you do push-ups, okay? We call this the pectoralis major muscle, okay? So it flexes the humerus, basically, okay? So think about, okay, pushing your body off of the ground, essentially, right? Here on this model, okay, you can see this large muscle right there, your pecs right there. That's the pectoralis major, okay? Now, deep to the pectoralis major, okay, if I remove the pectoralis muscle, you see this muscle here. Well, this is the pectoralis minor muscle, all right? And the pectoralis minor muscle, right, in terms of action, it depresses the point of the shoulder, drawing the scapular superiorly, okay, towards the thorax, okay? So kind of bringing your shoulders forward, basically, right? So that's the pectoralis minor right there. So on our model, okay, you see if we remove the pectoralis, so it's deep to the pectoralis major, you can see this right here. This is the pectoralis minor muscle, okay? All right. The next shoulder and thorax muscle we're going to talk about is the trapezius, okay? So this is the most superficial muscle here of the posterior thorax right there, right? So action, right, extends the head, okay, raises, okay, and rotates and retracts the scapula, right? So think about shrugging your shoulders, basically, right? When you shrug your shoulders, you're like, you know, the little shoulder emoji, you know, okay, or in the gym, okay, when you're kind of, you have your dumbbells off to your side and you're kind of bringing your shoulders up, okay, you're working out your trapezius muscle. So here we see this large muscle here, okay, some of it's actually removed, okay, but extends all the way down here, okay, but this would be considered the trapezius right there, okay. All right, the deltoid are these shoulder muscles right here, all right. It's for arm abduction, so is that moving the arm away from your midline or towards your midline, okay, so it's moving your arm away from the midline, right, so here, okay, is that deltoid muscle, okay, so if you look on the model, okay, it's this muscle right here in your shoulder, that large one, we call that the deltoid muscle. All right, now, there are muscles in between your ribs, all right? Now, if you look at this, okay, there's two different types, okay? So here's your sternum, and here's your backbone, your vertebra, So more towards the front, the muscles that are between your ribs, we call these the internal intercostals, right? Now, here's your spine again, right? These muscles between your ribs found more towards the back. Posteriorly, we call these the external intercostals, right? So they do overlap one another, okay? Obviously, these would be more deep. These would be more superficial, okay? But they do overlap, right? In terms of what they do, okay? The internal and the external intercostals, okay, they help with respiration. They help breathing in and out, basically, okay? Now, it would be easy to say that the external intercostals are the ones for helping you breathe out, and the internal intercostals are the ones that help you breathe in, but it's the opposite, okay? So external intercostals pulls the rib toward one another to elevate the rib cage, and it aids in breathing in, okay? So when you take a deep breath in, you see your rib cage, okay, start to elevate. Well, that's because of your external intercostals, okay? Now, when you breathe out, okay, you can kind of depress your rib cage, right? And what happens there is that you breathe out. Well, that's the action of the internal intercostals, okay? All right, so here we see the front of our model. You can see the muscles that are in between the ribs towards the front. Well, those would be considered the internal intercostals, right? Okay, so action helps you breathe out, right? And then if we see the backbone and the vertebra and the spine here, okay, then we see muscles in between the ribs here. Well, then towards the back, well, then these ones would be the external intercostals, okay? All right. Now, what bone and what structure is this right here? What bone and structure? Well, that bone is the scapula, right? And this structure is the spine. So the bone is scapula, structure, spine. So when you hear supraspinatus, supra means above the spine. Well, they're not talking about this spine here. They're talking about the spine of the scapula. So you see above the spine, so you have to remove the trapezius. So here the trapezius has been removed. Okay, so you see this, what we call this, the supraspinatus. Okay, so this assists in abduction of the humerus, okay, and stabilizes your shoulder joint. So if we go here, okay, you actually see here's that spine of our scapula, and there's a muscle above the spine. So the trapezius has been removed on this side of the model, and you see right there, well, there is your supraspinatus in red. Okay. All right, the infra means below, so below the spine. So this muscle right here, okay, this is below the spine. This is the infraspinatus. All right, so function of the infraspinatus, lateral rotation of the humerus. Okay, it helps hold, okay, the head of the humerus within the glenoid cavity, and it stabilizes the shoulder. Okay, so if we go here, right, so this is your spine. Okay, so below the spine, we see this muscle right here. Well, this muscle here is the infraspinatus. Okay. All right, the teres major, okay, I always describe it as looking at as a slice of pie, okay, slice of pizza. Okay, and this muscle right there, this is your teres major muscle. Okay, it's a rotator cuff muscle. It extends medially, okay, extends and medially rotates and adducts the humerus. Okay, so extends the humerus, medially rotates the humerus, and adducts the humerus, right? And it works together, okay, with the latissimus dorsi, which is this muscle here that we'll talk about later. Okay. All right, so where would this be found? Where would the teres major be found on this model? So this is your deltoid. Okay, here's my trapezius up here. Here's my infraspinatus. Well, it's this one right here. It looks like a slice of pie. Well, there is the teres major muscle. Okay. All right, latissimus dorsi, very large muscle. Swimmers have huge lats, right? So latissimus refers to lateral, and dorsi is towards the back, right? So it's a broad, flat muscle in your lower back, in your lumbar region. Okay, it's the prime mover of arm extension, right? Adducts and medially rotates the arm. Okay, so think about, okay, when you're doing a swimming stroke, okay, you're extending and then doing that power stroke, right? All right, so where would that be on this model? Well, again, here's my trapezius, here's my deltoid, here's my infraspinatus, here is my teres major. Well, it's this muscle down here. Okay, this muscle down here. That is the latissimus dorsi. Okay. And that should be it, guys, for the thorax and shoulder muscles that we see there on page 3 of your lab manual. Okay, so we're going to move on now to page 4 of your lab manual, and we're going to talk about the abdominal muscles. All right. So it's not just one layer of muscles. Actually, there's actually multiple layers, okay, of muscles in your abdominal region. So starting off, okay, you're gonna see here, guys, the more superficial layer. You see the fibers running, okay, at a diagonal. Okay, what's the fancy word in anatomy when we say diagonal? Well, we say oblique, right? Oblique section or oblique plane. Okay, so here we see the muscle fibers running diagonally in this direction. We call these the external obliques. Okay, so they aid, okay, the muscles in your of the back in the trunk rotation and also lateral flexion. Okay, so think about when you go to the gym and you're working out your obliques and you're kind of just doing that kind of, this is a little teapot dance, right? So that's what we call the external obliques. So here on this, okay, model, okay, you can see that down here, okay, there's fibers running like this, there's fibers running like that, there's fibers running vertically, and here you can see the fibers, okay, running in an oblique position, okay, much like we saw here, the fibers running in oblique orientation position, okay, well, an arrow or a sticker placement here, okay, well, there's your external obliques, okay. Now, deep to the external obliques, you see now another layer of muscle, okay, where the muscle fibers are running in an opposite diagonal direction. Okay, well, these ones here are called the internal obliques. Okay, so if I go over here, okay, you can see now these muscle fibers in this little square patch on this model, okay, running in that direction. Well, these here would be considered the internal obliques. Okay. Now, at the same level as the internal obliques, you see these ones here running vertically straight up and down, okay, the ones that create the six-pack, right, in your abdomen, right? These ones here are called the rectus abdominis, right? So this one flexes and rotates the vertebral column, stabilizes the pelvis during walking. When we think about sit-ups, right? Okay, these are the ones here, okay? For the internal obliques, I didn't mention it, but it's pretty much the same function. Flexes and rotates the vertebral column, stabilizes pelvis during walking, used in sit-ups and curls. Okay, so okay, same function as, okay, the rectus abdominis here. So here is your external obliques, here are your internal obliques, and right here you can see, okay, the muscle fibers running vertically up and down. Well, those represent, okay, the rectus abdominis. Rectus means straight, all right? And then the deepest, okay, layer of muscle in the abdominal wall, okay, is the transverse abdominis. Okay, transverse section or cross section, remember, it means horizontal. So here you see the muscle fibers, okay, running horizontally, right? And this is the deepest layer of muscle. So this is going to compress the abdominal contact. So like sucking your belly in, for example, right? This is the transverse abdominis. So you see here this little triangular patch that they put right here with the muscle fibers running horizontally. Well, there's the transverse abdominis on that model right there. Okay. All right, so we're going to move out from page 4, the abdominal muscles, now to page 5, the arm muscles, right? So I want you guys to picture an arm in anatomical position, okay? So the arms are off to the side, the palms are supinated, and they're facing forward, okay? So still with your eyes closed, right? The muscles on the front of that arm, okay, would those be the flexors or would those be the extensors? Okay, would those be the ones that would decrease the angle, like doing curls, for example? Or those are the extensors, the ones that would extend your arm? Well, the ones in the front of your arm, okay, those are all going to be, okay, again, we have the palms facing forward, right, in anatomical position. Those are all going to be flexors. Now, on the back of your arm, okay, all of those muscles back there, okay, well, those are going to then be, right, the extensors, right? So these muscles in the front would be the flexors. On the back side of this arm would be the extensors, all right? Now, in your forearm, where's your radius and where's your ulna? Okay, the radius is on the side of the thumb or the side of the pinky? Well, the radius is on the side of the thumb. It's the more lateral one, right? Your ulna is the more medial one. It's inside of the pinky. So if you know those two things, okay, if you know that the flexors are on the front of your arm and the extensors are on the back of your arm, okay, and you know that your radius is on the side of your thumb, the lateral side, and your ulna is on the side of your pinky, the medial side, okay, finding these muscles are going to be pretty easy, okay? So the first one we're going to talk about is the triceps brachii, all right? So the triceps is an extensor, so that's going to be on the front or the back of the arm. It's an extensor. Well, it's going to be on the back, okay? It's a powerful forearm extensor. So you can see back here. So we're looking at the front, but we can see this muscle on the back here. Okay, well, this one on the back is called the triceps brachii. So here's a posterior view. You see this big muscle on the back side of your arm. Okay, well, that's called the triceps brachii. Okay, so it's an extensor. When we want to straighten your elbow out, right? Straighten out your arm. Okay, this is the muscle that's going to do that. That's the triceps. So here's our arm model. Okay, so it's a left-handed arm model. So you can see this is the front, this is the back. So you see this muscle on the back side here. If we blow it up, okay, this muscle on the back side there, well, there's the triceps brachii right there. Okay. Now the biceps brachii is a flexor. So is that going to be in the front of the arm or in the back of the arm? If it's a flexor, well, it's going to be on the front of the arm. Okay, see this large muscle right there. Okay, when you do curls, okay, when you flex your arm at the elbow, when you're doing, okay, you're showing off people and you're flexing your arm right there. Well, that's the biceps brachii. All right, so flexion of the elbow, okay, and also supination of the forearm. All right. So here we see our arm model. Okay, this muscle right here in the front. Okay, if we blow it up, this muscle right here in the front, where there's the biceps brachii. Okay, so this flexes the arm at the elbow. Now, pronator teres, its name already tells you what it does, right? So it's not going to really, all right. Its main function isn't to flex or extend. It is a weak flexor, right? But its job is to pronate, right? So is that palms facing forward or is that palms facing back? Well, that's going to be palms facing back, right? So here, okay, you can actually see it. Okay, it's this muscle right, and here's the front of your elbow. It's this muscle right here, okay, that goes from medial to lateral, right? This is your pronator teres right there, okay? So that's a right arm model. So here's our left arm model. It's the same deal. Okay, so it's in this elbow region. So let's blow this up. Okay, you can see it's number 22 right here on this little model. Okay, going from medial to lateral. This is called the pronator teres. Okay, so it's involved in pronation, right, of your arm. Okay, and it also is a weak flexor, but that's not the main function. All right, now the ones that get complicated are the ones in your forearm now. All right, so you know where your radius is. It's on the side of the thumb. Okay. You know where your pinky is inside side of your ulna. It's inside of your pinky. I'm sorry. All right. And you know that muscles in the front are flexors in your forearm, and the muscles in the back of your forearm are extensors. Okay. So you're eventually going to memorize that the brachioradialis is a flexor. Okay. So should I be looking on the front of my forearm or on the back of my forearm if I know it's a flexor? Okay. Well, you should be looking on the front of the forearm. It's a synergist and forearm flexion. It's in the front. Okay, now its name tells you where in the front of your forearm you should be looking. Should be looking on the side of your thumb, or should be looking on the side of your pinky if there's the word radialis in it. Well, you should be looking on the side of your thumb. So it's this large muscle here. This is the lateral side. Your thumb would be on this side. This is the brachioradialis right there. Okay, so here's the side of the thumb. Okay, it's this large muscle right there. Okay, it's on the side of the thumb. Okay, this is not tilted as much, but it's this muscle right there, right? So that muscle, large side of the thumb, okay, we call that the brachioradialis. Okay? So again, it's not this one right here, because that one is this right there, okay? So I'm not pointing at this one, right? I'm pointing at the one behind it back here, okay? So this is the one I'm not pointing at. I'm pointing at this one in the back. Okay, that's the brachioradialis. So it's a flexor, so you know it's in the front. Okay, and it's on the side of the thumb because it says radialis. Okay, and you see the side of the thumb right there. All right, flexor digitorum superficialis. Okay, should I be looking on the front of my forearm or on the back of my forearm? Flexor digitorum superficialis. It's a flexor. You should be looking in the front still. Okay. So its name superficialis is actually it confuses a lot of students. It is not a superficial muscle, okay, meaning that it's not, okay, towards the top. Okay, it's actually a deep muscle, right? You see it at the end of the forearm. So before I show it to you, this deep muscle, okay, it flexes the wrist and the middle phalanges. Okay, so fingers 2 through 5. Okay, so this doesn't do anything with the thumb. Okay, it now flexes these 4 fingers right here. So if I go here, okay, it's going to be in this region right here, okay? So if I blow this region up, right, you can see it's not this muscle here. It's not this muscle. These are 2 superficial muscles. It's the one that's deep, Okay, so that muscle here, the muscle that's, you can see in between those two muscles right there. So this deep muscle, okay, that flexes, okay, the middle phalanges right here, right? This here is the flexor digitorum superficialis, this deep one. Okay. All right, the flexor carpi ulnaris, okay, front of the forearm or in the back of the forearm in anatomical position. Well, it's still a flexor, so we should be looking on the front of the forearm still, right? Flexor. Now its name, ulnaris, tells you, should I be looking on the side of the thumb or should I be looking on the side of the pinky? Well, ulna is the more medial side. It should be looking on the side of the pinky right here. Okay, so front side of the pinky, you can actually see it right there. There's the flexor carpi ulnaris right there. Okay, that's your flexor carpi ulnaris. All right, so, okay, where can I see that on this model? Okay, so I know it's on the side of the pinky. Okay, so let's look at this model that's blown up. Okay, so front side of the pinky, well then there you go. Okay, so there it is. There is the flexor carpi ulnaris right there. All right, so you have your brachioradialis, you have your flexor digitorum superficialis on the front, and you have your flexor carpi ulnaris right there. Okay, so the action, again, it's a powerful flexor of the wrist and it adducts the hand. Okay, so adducts the hand, right, in terms of, right, bringing it towards the midline, right? So think of putting your hands off to the side like anatomical and then doing a little karate chop towards your midline, okay, with your wrists. All right. So we're going to now go from the flexors in your forearm to the extensors in your forearm, okay? So extensor carpi ulnaris. So should I look me on the front of your forearm or should I be looking at the back of your forearm? So these are extensors now. You should be looking on the back side, right? Should I be looking on the side of my pinky or the side of my thumb? On the back of my forearm, if it says ulnaris. Well, you should be looking on the side of the pinky, okay? So here's now a posterior view of it, okay? So there's the elbow right there, right? And so you can see now this is the pinky. So I'm looking on this side, okay? And then you can see right here, right? Here is that extensor carpi ulnaris, right? So going here, okay? So here is our model right here, okay? I'm going to blow up this region right here, okay? So again, this is still the front. So this is your what? This is the pinky side. So this must be the, okay, flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, the extensor carpi ulnaris is also on the side of the pinky, but it's on the back side now. So if I see it right next to it, this muscle right here is the extensor carpi ulnaris. Okay, so flexor carpi ulnaris on the front of the arm is right next door neighbors to the extensor carpi ulnaris on the back side of the arm. So there's my flexor, my extensor is just on the back side, okay, on the same side of the pinky. Okay, they're neighbors. One's in the front, one's in the back. Okay, the extensor digitorum, okay, it's a superficial muscle, okay, it's going to extend the wrist and, okay, the middle phalanges again. So if I go here, right, you can see this is your extensor digitorum right there, okay, so this one here is going to extend these four fingers, right? So here's the back side of this model, okay, you can see this muscle right here is going to now extend these four fingers, okay, so this muscle right here, this is the extensor digitorum. Extends the wrist and the middle phalanges. All right. So those, okay, guys, are the muscles of the arm on page 5. Okay. So let's move on. Let's talk about now, okay, the muscles, okay, of the leg on page 6, right, and then the actions we see on page 7. So we're almost done. So if we look at the leg muscles, okay, so here's a figure of it first. Okay, when you hear the word iliacus or ilium, you're thinking about the hip, right? You guys learned about the coxibone. You talked about the ilium and the iliac crest. Okay, so the iliacus, right, is found right here. So here you can see the iliac crest of your coxibone, and the kind of the lining, the ilium on the inside here is your iliacus muscle. Okay, so this is your iliacus muscle right there. So it flexes the trunk on the thigh, right? And flexes, okay, flexes the thigh, lateral flexion of the vertebral column. All right. So if I go here on this model, okay, so on this one, you see the blue sticker right on the iliacus. If I remove that sticker, you can see the iliacus right here. Okay, and there's that iliac crest right here. All right. Okay, your butt muscles. Okay, so the big butt muscle right there, we call that the gluteus maximus. Okay, kind of deep, but it's still visible off to the side. This is the gluteus medius over here. Okay, so the gluteus maximus is the largest, okay, and the most superficial of the butt muscles. All right, what does it do? It's involved in thigh extension. Okay, so think about walking upstairs, right? Okay, so climbing stairs, okay, would be, okay, involved, okay, in that butt muscle right there. Now, partially covered by the gluteus maximus, but it's still visible as the gluteus medius, okay, and this abducts and medially rotates the thigh. Okay, so abducts means, okay, moving the thigh away from midline. Okay, medially rotates means what? Turning your thigh inward. Okay. All right, so where would we see those on a model? Okay, so you see this would be actually labeled number 3 on this model. Okay, this big butt muscle there would be then the gluteus maximus, and then you see partially covered by it but still visible, well, there's the gluteus medius on this model. Okay. All right, now we're going to talk about the muscles that are here kind of in that pubic region. Okay, so coming off of that pubic region. Okay, and there's 3 muscles that we're going to talk about in this region. Okay, one of them is what's called the adductor longus. So its name tells you what it's going to do. It's going to adduct the thigh, right? So adduct, okay, is what? Bringing it, okay, away or towards the midline. We'll bring it towards, right? So medially rotates and flexes the thigh also. Okay, the gracilis, okay, is this one, the most medial one that we talk about. So here's my adductor longus. Medial to that, you guys can see this is my gracilis muscle right here. Okay, so adductor longus, gracilis. So what function does this do? Well, it adducts the thigh. Okay, kind of the same thing as the adductor longus. It flexes and medially rotates the leg. All right, so flexes and medially rotates the leg. Well, there is your gracilis. Okay, and the last one we're going to show you on this slide is this long strap-like muscle right here. Okay, and this long strap-like muscle is called the sartorius muscle. All right. So it flexes, it abducts, and laterally rotates, okay, the thigh. It also flexes the knee. Okay, so this is my adductor longus. This is my gracilis. This is my sartorius. Okay, so in terms of action, guys, you notice I'm not really going much into the action. It's your job to learn those. It's your job to memorize these. So when you actually see these on the lab exam, you can name them because you know what the location, and you can name their actions here. Okay, so here's that same model. Okay, and we're focusing on this region right here. Okay, you actually can see here's my adductor longus. Okay, there's my adductor longus. Right here, this most medial one right here is my gracilis. Okay, so this most medial one right here is my gracilis. Okay, and then we see this long strap-like muscle right here. Okay, that is the sartorius muscle. Okay, so here you see portion of that long strap-like muscle. It goes all the way down to your knee, right? We call that the sartorius. All right, we have 4 muscles in the front of your thigh, all right? These are the quadricep muscles. Quad refers to 4, right? Now, the one in the middle, okay, the more superficial one, we call this the rectus femoris. Okay, all these pretty much do the same thing. They're going to extend the knee. So, for example, kicking a ball, right? So right here is the rectus femoris, okay, the one in the middle. Okay, and then we have the one, okay, that's lateral to that. Well, that's called the vastus lateralis, okay? And then we have the one that's medial to that. Well, that one's the vastus medialis, okay? And then the one that's deep, you can't see it, guys, because it's deep to the rectus femoris, okay? But if I were to move the rectus femoris, the one that's in between the vastus lateralis, okay, and the vastus medialis, okay, would be the vastus intermedius. Okay, so all of them pretty much do the same thing. They're going to extend the knee. Okay. All right, so here we see our model. Okay, if we look at the quadricep muscle on the lateral side, right, well, that's the vastus lateralis. The one on the medial side would be the vastus medialis. Okay, and then the one in the middle that's visible and superficial, that's the rectus femoris, right? Now, Does that mean on a lab exam, I'm not going to ask you for vastus and medius since you can't see it? Okay, well, I can ask for it, right? So if I put an arrow or a sticker on the rectus femoris, but then I say hint deep, right? Well, then I'm not talking about the rectus femoris. I'm talking about the muscle that's deep to the rectus femoris. I'm talking about the vastus intermedius. Okay, so if you see the word hint deep, right, or the words hint deep on that question, and I'm pointing at the rectus femoris, well, I'm not asking for the rectus femoris. I'm asking for the vastus intermedius. Okay. All right, the hamstring are a group of 3 muscles on the back of your thigh. All right. So starting off, okay, laterally right here, okay, we call this the biceps femoris. Okay, this lateral muscle is the biceps femoris. Okay, so all these are going to do what? These ones here, okay, are going to extend the thigh, okay, laterally rotate and flex the knee. Okay, so kind of, right, bring your foot back before you kick the ball, basically, right? So the more lateral of one is called, okay, the biceps femoris. Okay, the medial ones now are the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus muscle, right? So the semitendinosus is the superficial one right here, all right? It's a thin superficial one. So this one's also going to extend the thigh, all right? It also medially rotates the leg. The deeper one here, okay, this deeper muscle, deep to the semitendinosus, but because it's wider and the semitendinosus is skinnier, it's still visible. Okay, so the deeper one is called the semimembranosus. Okay, so this one also extends the thigh and flexes the knee and medially rotates the leg. All right, so if I go here, okay, here's more lateral. Okay, so this is the medial side, this is the lateral side. This lateral one on the back side of my model, this is the biceps femoris. Okay, and then you see 2 muscles here. Okay, so I'm probably gonna just draw on this really quickly for you guys. Okay, just to give you an outline. All right, so if I were to, let me see, give me a color here. Green, all right. It doesn't want, I don't know why it's not doing it. Okay. So right here, I'm going to outline the semitendinosus muscle. All right, so let's do this. Okay, so here, okay, you can see that semitendinosus muscle on the top, and then deep to it though, okay, because it's a lot wider, okay, you actually can see that semimembranosus peeking out from underneath. Okay, so the one on the top, the thinner muscle on top, okay, is the semitendinosus muscle, and then the one that's deep to it on either side here and here, okay, well that represents then the semimembranosus muscle. Okay, so hopefully drawing on that, okay, helped it out a little bit there. Okay, so let's go to the lower leg now. Okay, so the tibialis anterior is the one in the front. Okay, it's this frontmost muscle. Okay, so when you think about dorsiflexion, again, it's like pointing your toes towards the ceiling or taking your foot off the gas, right? So it's the prime mover in dorsiflexion. Also, it involves in inverting the foot. So here's the front of our model, okay, and you can see, okay, your kneecap would be right here, okay, so this muscle right there coming right down, well, that is your tibialis anterior right there. Okay, so right below the kneecap, this is your tibialis anterior. Okay, so think about dorsiflexion and also inverting the foot, right? Now, fibularis longus, your fibula is on the lateral side of your lower leg, right? So right here, okay, this would be your fibularis longus muscle right there, right? So this one plantar flexes the foot. It also everts the foot. So taking your ankle, instead of your traditional ankle sprain, when your ankle goes medially, okay, here we're having your ankle go laterally, right? So we call this the fibularis longus, right? So here's our model, right? Here's the lateral side. You see this most lateral muscle on the lower part of your leg. Well, there's the fibularis longus muscle right there, okay? And then you have your calf muscles, Okay, so you have what we call the gastrocnemius muscles. Okay, so here's a posterior view, here's a lateral view of that same gastrocnemius. Okay, here's that lateral view of your calf muscle. We call that the gastrocnemius muscle. Okay, so here's plantar flexion, so pushing, okay, down on the gas, or okay, standing tippy toe, right, on your feet. Okay, that's the gastrocnemius right there. All right, now deep to that, you see this muscle right here, okay, running parallel to the fibularis longus. Okay, we call this muscle the soleus muscle. Okay, so deep to the gastrocnemius, right, we call this one, okay, the soleus. Okay, so it's also involved in plantar flexion. So here you can see this muscle that's deep to the gastrocnemius right there. Okay, well, that is the soleus muscle right there, plantar flexion. All right, so that, guys, is the introduction, the video introduction for the skeletal muscle lab, okay, and okay, describing various different forms of body movements. Okay, so I'll see you guys on the next lecture. Okay, have a good day. Bye.